Maybe you're just getting old, Karen. It happens. That's what my husband said to me. Flat voice. Eyes glued to his phone. Like my pain was an inconvenience, not a reality. I remember that morning clearly. The smell of burnt toast, the kitchen clock ticking too loud, the cold tile under my bare feet. It was the day I realized something in my life had gone terribly wrong. And it wasn't just my body betraying me. It was the person I thought I could lean on. Menopause had come like a thief. Hot flashes that left me drenched in sweat at 3 a.m. Mood swings that made me cry over cereal commercials. And memory lapses so bad. I once forgot why I walked into my own living room. But the real pain wasn't the hormones. It was how invisible I'd become. I'd spent 22 years keeping our home together, raising kids, balancing the bills, working part-time at the clinic to keep the insurance going. And suddenly, overnight, I wasn't beautiful anymore. Not desirable. Not important. That morning, when he said those words, something inside me cracked. Not like glass, but like old wood that finally gives under pressure. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe, I said, pouring coffee I didn't even want. But inside, I was screaming. How could you say that? Don't you see me struggling? He didn't look up. He just said, you should try yoga or something. My mom says it helped. And then he walked out. I stood there, staring at the half-empty cup. My reflection in the kitchen window looked tired, swollen-eyed, and lost. And for the first time, I admitted it, I wasn't okay. Later that week, I went to my doctor. Dr. Simmons. Young, cheerful, probably not even 30. She looked at her screen more than my face. Your hormones are shifting, she said, typing. Totally normal for your age. For your age. The same phrase that seemed to follow me everywhere now. Grocery store, pharmacy, even at work. I was becoming a cliché. The next few months were a blur. He started coming home late. He said work was stressful. I believed him. I always believed him. Until the night I found the text messages. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was perfect. And the one that broke me completely. Karen thinks I'm working late again. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the phone. It felt like the room was spinning, like all the air had been sucked out. The man who once promised to love me in sickness and in health was laughing about me with another woman. That night, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat in the dark with a blanket around my shoulders and realized. The menopause didn't make me weak. The betrayal didn't make me broken. But pretending everything was fine, that was destroying me. I didn't know it then, but that was the night I began to wake up. Slowly, painfully, but fully. When I finally confronted him, it wasn't dramatic. No yelling, no breaking things. Just a quiet Tuesday night in our living room, the TV flickering between commercials and his reflection in the glass. He looked up, annoyed that I'd interrupted his show. Who's Ashley? I asked. His expression froze, just for a second, then turned casual, like he was swatting a fly. Someone from work. Why? I held up his phone. Because she texted you she can't wait to see you again. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he laughed, an empty, condescending laugh that still echoes in my head sometimes. Karen, don't do this. You're hormonal. You've been off lately. That was it. Not guilt. Not fear. Just that dismissive tone that made it sound like I was the crazy one. I remember my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The remote slipped from my hand and hit the floor. I said quietly, "Don't blame my hormones for your lies." He stood up, towering over me, still calm, still pretending to be in control. "You're tired. You need help," he said. "You've been acting unstable for months." And there it was, gaslighting in its purest form. He turned my pain into my fault. That night, after he went upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I opened a new folder. I named it Truth. I started saving screenshots, messages, call logs. I printed bank statements the next day at work, quietly, one by one. It wasn't revenge. It was survival. I didn't know what my next step would be, but I knew I needed proof. Proof for the lawyer I hadn't met yet. Proof for the woman I was about to become. A week later, I found out he'd used our joint account to pay for hotel rooms. That was my breaking point and my awakening. I opened a separate bank account that day. I started therapy, and I told Dr. Simmons the truth. I'm not depressed. I'm done pretending. She looked up, finally meeting my eyes for the first time in months. And she said something I'll never forget. "You're not losing your mind. You're rediscovering it." I walked out of that office into the bright California sun feeling lighter, though nothing in my life had actually changed yet. But inside, something had shifted, quietly, powerfully. That night, I cooked dinner for myself only. I turned off my phone. And I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. I wasn't ready to leave him yet, but I was done letting him define who I was. You know what's funny? People always imagine starting over as something bold and glamorous, new apartment, new haircut, new life. But it doesn't look like that. Not at first. It looks like sitting in your car outside the grocery store because you can't remember what you came for. It looks like crying quietly in Target because your credit card got declined. It looks like silence, long, heavy, awkward silence, at a dinner table built for two. That was my life for a while. After I opened that separate account, I began moving money slowly, bit by bit, $50 here, $75 there. He never noticed. He never cared enough to check. I told him the groceries had gotten expensive. He nodded, scrolling through his phone. He'd stopped even pretending. He came home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. Once, he showered before hugging me, like he could wash off his guilt. I wanted to hate him, but I was too tired. Too numb. Years of being the caretaker, the supportive wife, the understanding one. It had drained everything in me. I remember one night, I sat in the bathroom staring at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back had gray roots, deep lines, and eyes that didn't sparkle anymore. I whispered to her, "Where did you go?" That whisper became a question I couldn't unhear. So, I started searching for her, for me. At first, it was small. I joined a local women's support group at the community center. Most of us were over 40, dealing with menopause, divorce, empty nests, or just life. We laughed, we cried, we vented. It was the first time in months I didn't feel invisible. One woman, Lisa, told me, "Menopause isn't the end of youth. It's the beginning of truth." That line stuck with me. She was right. For the first time, I was starting to see clearly, not just him, but myself. I began journaling, every night before bed, writing about my anger, my confusion, my fear. Sometimes I wrote things I didn't even know I felt until I saw them on paper. It became therapy before I could afford the real thing. Then came the day I saw her. Ashley, at the coffee shop near his office. She was younger, of course, maybe early 30s. Perfect hair, perfect posture, that confident look of a woman who believes she's special. I almost turned away, but she looked straight at me and smiled. Not a kind smile, a smug one. In that second, everything I'd suppressed, the humiliation, the sadness, the self-blame, it burned up. And what remained was something fierce. I didn't confront her. I didn't need to. I just walked past her, head high, coffee in hand. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt awake. That night, I emailed a divorce attorney. Her name was Rachel Grant. Her reply came within the hour. "Let's talk tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bring any documents you have." I stared at that email for a long time. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. From adrenaline. From hope. I didn't know what the next chapter would look like. But I knew this. I wasn't going to be the woman who stayed quiet anymore. Rachel's office smelled like peppermint and paper. It was small but sharp, every folder labeled, every pen lined up. She looked at me the way doctors used to, only this time with focus. With respect. "Tell me everything," she said. And I did. The messages. The hotel receipts. The bank withdrawals. Every humiliation I'd swallowed for months. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "Karen, you've already done the hardest part. You stopped pretending." Those words hit deep. Because that's what I'd been doing all along, performing. Pretending to be the calm wife, the understanding mother, the woman who handled change gracefully. I wasn't handling it gracefully. I was drowning in silence. Rachel walked me through everything: joint property, assets, alimony, documentation. She told me exactly what to do next. Stop using the joint card. Keep every text, every email. Don't tell him you've met me yet. I nodded. It wasn't revenge. It was strategy. When I left her office, the air outside felt different. It wasn't freedom yet, but it was direction. I drove home in silence, thinking about all the years I'd given him. Birthdays, anniversaries, forgiveness after his bad moods. And suddenly I realized something painful and powerful. He never took my love seriously, because I didn't take myself seriously enough to demand more. That night, I made a plan. I printed the lease forms for a small one-bedroom apartment downtown, near my clinic. I started gathering essentials: passport, social security card, my birth certificate, my kids' photos. It felt like preparing for an escape. And in a way, it was. I didn't tell my children yet. They were both in college. I didn't want them to choose sides or carry my heartbreak. This was my battle and my rebirth. 2 weeks later, I noticed he'd become careless. He stopped hiding things. He was so sure I'd never leave. He still called me sweetheart when he wanted laundry done or dinner cooked. That fake sweetness used to melt me. Now it made my stomach turn. One night, while he was in the shower, his phone buzzed again. I didn't even look this time. Instead, I placed my own phone on the counter, hit record, and said out loud, softly but clearly, "Today is the day I stop living small." I kept that recording. I play it sometimes when I forget how far I've come. A week later, Rachel called me with the words that changed everything. "I've filed the papers. He'll be served tomorrow." I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Instead, I just sat there, holding the phone, whispering. Finally, that night, I cooked myself dinner, pasta with too much garlic and a glass of red wine. The house was silent except for the clink of my fork. I looked around, realizing soon I wouldn't live here anymore. And for the first time in years, that didn't scare me. It thrilled me. I went to bed early. When I woke up, there was a text from him. "Did you do something?" I smiled, typed back one line, and hit send. Yes, I finally did something for myself. The morning he got served, I was at the clinic. It was 10:42 a.m. when my phone buzzed, 3 missed calls, 1 voicemail. I didn't even have to listen. I knew what it was. By noon, the storm had begun. He showed up at the clinic parking lot, still wearing his pressed office shirt, but his face, red, angry, desperate. He waited by my car, pacing like he owned the space. When I saw him, my pulse spiked. For a second, I felt that old panic, the kind that makes your hands shake and your throat close up. But I took a breath, straightened my jacket, and walked toward him. "You couldn't even talk to me first?" he snapped. His voice was low but sharp, the kind that cuts without shouting. "I tried," I said quietly. "You didn't listen." He laughed, bitter. "So this is it. You ruin our lives because of some mood swing." Mood swing. That word. The last weapon men love to use when they can't control a woman anymore. I looked him in the eye and said, "This isn't a mood swing. This is a wake-up call for both of us." He stepped closer, voice trembling with fury. "You'll regret this, Karen. You can't just throw everything away." I didn't flinch. "I'm not throwing anything away," I said. "I'm reclaiming it." He didn't know what to do with that. He just stood there, jaw tight, eyes darting, realizing I wasn't the same woman who used to apologize for breathing too loud. Then he said something that told me everything about who he really was. "No one's going to want you now. Not at your age." For a split second, it hit me like a slap. But then I smiled. Because it didn't sting, not anymore. I'd already wanted myself, finally, after decades of waiting for someone else's validation. I opened my car door, sat down, and looked up at him. "You're right," I said. "No one's going to want me. They're going to respect me." And I drove away. That night, I slept in my new apartment for the first time. Just a mattress on the floor, a lamp, and a single box labeled essentials. The air smelled like paint and possibility. I sat cross-legged on the floor with takeout noodles, watching the city lights through half-open blinds. I should have felt lonely, but I didn't. I felt free. In the weeks that followed, the legal process began. He tried to fight, the house, the savings, even my car. Rachel handled everything with calm precision. Every time he sent a nasty email, she replied with one line. "Please direct future correspondence through your attorney." That line became my emotional armor. I focused on rebuilding. At the clinic, I picked up more shifts. On weekends, I volunteered at a women's shelter downtown. Hearing their stories reminded me I wasn't alone. Betrayal wears many faces, but the pain is the same. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to rebuild me. I cut my hair short. I started morning walks with a podcast and iced coffee instead of tears. And one day, while tossing old clothes into a donation bag, I caught my reflection in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not because I was happy yet, but because I was proud of surviving what tried to destroy me. It's strange how silence can become comforting once chaos leaves your life. The quiet used to scare me. Now it felt like healing. I'd wake up before sunrise, brew coffee, and watch light spill across my apartment walls. No shouting, no tension, just me, my breath, and a day I could finally call my own. The first few weeks were still rough, though. The divorce wasn't finalized yet. The paperwork was endless, affidavits, disclosures, statements. Every time I signed my name, it felt like erasing a piece of my old self. But it also felt like reclaiming something sacred, my identity. He kept trying to reach out. Emails, voicemails, messages from mutual friends. One even said, "He's sorry, Karen. He just wants to talk." But I'd learned something powerful. Closure doesn't come from the person who hurt you. It comes from finally choosing yourself. So I blocked his number. I unfollowed him on social media. And I stopped checking to see if he'd moved on, because I had. One Saturday afternoon, I went shopping for new clothes. It sounds small, but it was huge for me. I'd spent years dressing to be appropriate, comfortable, age-appropriate. This time, I bought what I actually liked: fitted jeans, a red blouse, silver hoops. At the checkout counter, the young cashier said, "You look amazing, by the way." I laughed. You know what? I feel it. That night, I went out with Lisa and some women from the support group. We went dancing. Yes, dancing. I hadn't done that since my daughter's graduation. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel like someone's wife or someone's mother. I just felt like me. Somewhere between the laughter and the music, I caught my reflection in the bar mirror. Cheeks flushed, hair loose, eyes bright. And I whispered, "There you are." That moment hit me harder than any therapy session. Because that's when I realized I hadn't lost myself in menopause. I just buried her under years of obligation, guilt, and noise. A few days later, Rachel called with the update. "The divorce is finalized. You're officially free." I didn't cry. I just sat down, closed my eyes, and exhaled the longest breath of my life. After I hung up, I walked to the mirror again. The same one I'd looked into when I first whispered, "Where did you go?" This time, I said, "I never left. I was just waiting for you to remember." That night, I opened a bottle of wine, wrote a thank you note to Rachel, and sent an email to my daughter and son. Not about the divorce, but about what I'd learned. I told them, never love someone so much that you forget how to love yourself. Respect is the only forever that matters. They both replied within minutes. My daughter wrote, "Mom, I'm so proud of you." My son said, "You sound happier than ever." And I was. Because happiness isn't loud. Sometimes it's just a woman, standing alone in her kitchen, smiling at her reflection, finally at peace. Freedom has a strange rhythm. At first, it feels like chaos, too much space, too many choices, too much quiet. But then it settles into something beautiful. You start trusting yourself again. And just when you do, the past always seems to knock. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I just finished a long day at the clinic. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "Karen." The voice on the other end made my stomach twist. It was him. He started talking fast, the same way he always did when he wanted control. "Listen, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything." I didn't say a word. Not out of anger, but because I didn't know him space in my silence anymore. He continued, "I made mistakes. Big ones. Ashley's gone. It didn't work out. I miss us." For a split second, I felt the ghost of our history. 22 years of shared life, laughter, raising kids Sunday mornings. But then I remembered the woman in the mirror. The one I fought so hard to find again. So I said quietly, "You don't miss us. You miss having someone who forgave you no matter what." He didn't like that. He sighed. "You've changed." I smiled. Yes, that was the point. He tried again, his tone softening. "Karen, you're not getting any younger. We could." That was it. The last straw. "Don't finish that sentence," I said firmly. "Age doesn't scare me anymore. Losing myself does." The silence that followed was almost satisfying. Then he muttered, "You've become cold." I laughed, just once, not bitter, but free. "No," I said. "I've just stopped burning myself to keep other people warm." And then I hung up. I sat there for a while, phone still in my hand. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't crying. I just felt calm, peaceful. Later that evening, I walked down to the beach. It was breezy, golden hour, the kind of light that makes the whole world look forgiving. I took off my shoes, let the waves touch my feet, and thought about how far I'd come. I used to measure my worth by how much others needed me. Now, I measured it by how deeply I respected myself. When I got home, there was another message on my phone, from a number I didn't recognize. It was from Lisa. "Hey, our women's group is starting a mentorship program for newly divorced women. Would you be interested in leading it?" I read it twice, smiling. Me, a mentor. The woman who once couldn't even look at herself without guilt was now being asked to guide others. That night, I replied, "Yes, count me in." And just like that, A new chapter began. One not about survival, but about purpose. I wasn't rebuilding anymore. I was rising. The first time I stood in front of that room full of women, my hands trembled. Not from fear, but from the weight of everything that had brought me there. 15 faces looked back at me. Different ages, different stories, but the same quiet exhaustion in their eyes. I recognized it. It was the same look I'd once worn in my kitchen, clutching cold coffee and pretending everything was fine. I took a breath and said, "My name is Karen. I'm 49. I lost myself for a while, but I found something better. I found my strength." The room went still. Someone in the back wiped a tear. And suddenly I realized I wasn't nervous anymore. Because I wasn't speaking from pain anymore. I was speaking from power. I told them the truth, all of it. How menopause made me question my body. How betrayal made me question my worth. And how both somehow became the start of my rebirth. I told them about Rachel, my lawyer. About Lisa and the women's group that saved me. About the night I said enough, and meant it. And I ended with this. You don't have to be fearless to start over. You just have to be tired of your own suffering. Afterward, women came up to me one by one. Some hugged me, some just said thank you, but all of them looked a little taller than before. That night, walking home, I passed the same cafe where I'd once seen her. Ashley. But she wasn't there. And even if she had been, it wouldn't have mattered. Because the story was no longer about her or him. It was about me. About a woman who survived heartbreak, hormones, and humiliation, and turned it all into wisdom. A few weeks later, I got my final divorce settlement. It wasn't huge, but it was fair. Enough to breathe, to live, to start fresh. I used part of it to open something small, a women's wellness blog called Second Spring. It became my way of reminding others that menopause isn't an ending. It's a reset. Now, every morning, I write before sunrise, coffee in hand, hair tied back, sunlight spilling across my desk. Sometimes I still get lonely. But loneliness isn't the enemy anymore. It's just space I earned. I keep a note taped to my mirror. It says, "She became the woman she needed all along." That line keeps me grounded, through every new challenge, every small victory. People still ask me sometimes, "Do you ever think about him?" I smile and say, "No, but I thank him." Because losing him was how I found myself. Now, I walk through life differently, not trying to please, not trying to prove, just being. Menopause didn't break me. It introduced me to the woman who'd been waiting to live without apology. And she's not fragile anymore. She's not waiting to be chosen. She's untouchable. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Write it in the comments.